As soon as I kind of looked around for a minute or two, I went into the building. I checked in. I was welcomed by a really nice lady who checked me in. She asked me for my ID, which I knew about. I gave it to her. She asked me who is my coordinator, what's her name. I actually didn't know. She wrote that for me on a piece of paper, and she told me that I'll need this information to check in. So right on the left side from the reception area, there was kind of a small check-in booth, not booth, monitor, let's say that. You enter your first name, your email, if I recall correctly, and the name of your coordinator, and you have to agree on the fact that you cannot take pictures while you're there, you cannot share the information the information you hear there, and all that stuff. You say okay, and once you say okay, you get a badge. I don't know where it is, but you get the badge with your name and with your coordinator, which has a QR code. Yeah, it had a QR code. And then also on the right, there's a kind of a small box with clips that you can take. The clips are different colors, or the colors of the Google theme, right? And you clip it somewhere. You have to have that visible all time while you are on the Google campus. So while I was waiting, I needed to wait for my coordinator to come and pick me up. I started to just look at the Google products that I had there on display. So I was exploring that, and then my coordinator came up to pick me up. So we walked to the other building where I had the interview. While we were walking, we had small talk. She was kind of asking where I'm from, how was my flight, and all that stuff. What are my plans, if I'm staying for the weekend or not. And while on the way there, she actually told me that the street that we were crossing, it's closed during the springtime because they have some birds there that are nesting, so they are closing that drive so no cars can drive by, but people can walk. So that just was a small talk while we got to the building. Once we got to the building, on the way in, on the left side, there was kind of an area with snacks, drinks, coffee, juices, like you name it, a lot of different things to replenish your energy, right? And I was nervous. I didn't pick up anything besides water. We went to our conference room, and she started to tell me what is expected for the day about the interviews. So she told me that I'll have 5 interviews and a lunch. 5 interviews will be 2 interviews before lunch. Then I have lunch with the software developer, and then I will have 3 other interviews. And she told me that she and the person I'm going to lunch, they have no voting or no say in the process of if a person gets hired or not. The other 5 people who interview me, they have a say in the process. So she started to introduce to me the people that I'll be meeting today. So she told me, first interview, you will have this interview with so-and-so. Here's his title, and he will ask you design or system design questions. Then the next person is his name that, his title is that, and he will be asking you this, let's say software engineering and so on. So she told me each interview, what is the goal for that interview and who is interviewing me. And also, since the interview was in that room, she told me that all the interviews were in that room, and the first one will be a virtual interview or camera interview, right? It won't be face-to-face, and the other 4 will be face-to-face. So while we were talking and we got to the point where the interview started, we're supposed to start, it was 10:15 where the interview was supposed to start, because each interview was 45 minutes. So it's 10:15, and the person that we are supposed to meet with, it's not calling yet. So she reached out to him, kind of reminded him that we have a meeting or something like that, but it turned out there was a scheduling something there, miscommunication or something like that, I'm not sure. And once he came in, she left the room, and we got down to to the interview. So he introduced himself. He told me that he's a software developer with Google. He's been there for so many years, and here's what he's working on. And he asked me about me. I introduced myself, and we got down to the question that he had. And basically, I don't think I can tell you what exactly he asked me, but I can tell you what it was, like technology wise, right? So it was basically a graph question. And I made sure that I got all the requirements because he just gave me a set of information, and then I started to ask questions. What is the input? What is the expected output? All of the information related for that question. And I wrote down that on the left side of the board. And then once I felt that I had all the information, I already had the information that I needed to go on, I was checking to see if he sees what I'm writing, because before that I moved the camera to the whiteboard so he can see the whiteboard, what I'm writing. And it was clear that the information, what he's seeing is not clear, it's really blurred out. So the camera was having some issues with focusing on the whiteboard and could not see. So at the time I was trying to change the oh my god, what's the name? The markers that I was writing with. So I took a black instead of a green, and we agreed that I'll be writing larger font. But that didn't help either. So we decided just to go on with what it is, and I'll just explain everything I can. So I started to go with the steps that I'm planning to do, kind of a pseudo code there, what I will do. And once we kind of agreed on that, I started to move to the implementation. Once everything was implemented, it was exactly a few minutes left before the next interview. So he asked me if I have questions. I asked my questions, and the next interview came in. So that was that one. The next one was similar. The only difference was that it was in person. And actually the question that he asked me was a different problem, but it was also on graphs. And I believe I used hash tables in that one. A lot of times I had hints. I really was appreciating that, because I was solving something and then probably I was missing some nuances, and I was getting this constant information. It was a constant communication between us, and that was really nice. It felt natural. That's what I really liked. And I don't know, maybe he wanted to ask more problems of me to solve, but we got time only for one, and at the end I asked questions. So yeah, that's basically the second interview. That was for 45 minutes. Also, it was on the same kind of topic as the first one. I mean, it was on graphs, but the problem was different. And then the person that was supposed to take me for lunch was there. We got introduced, and he asked me, where do I want to go to eat? He asked me, do you want junk food? Do I have healthy food, Italian, Japanese? So he started to enumerate, and I was like, okay, I'm pointing that direction. Is there something there? It's like, yeah, let's go that direction. And he kind of said, since it's Friday, just don't get any punch, because it's with alcohol and probably you don't want to be under influence during your interview. So yeah, we went to lunch. The lunch interview was nothing as I was told. I mean, nothing that influences the decision making. It was just getting to know a person or a software developer at Google, what experiences they have, what they like, dislike. You basically just get to know that person, and that's what it was. Basically, we talked to where he's from, what is his experience, where he worked previously. I shared my background, and yeah, just stuff like that. And he was pretty new at Google. He was there for 4 months, and he really enjoys the environment and the culture, and he really likes the way that his managers, the organization, how it's set up, and all that experience was really well thought out. So what we turned out to have, we actually had sushi. So we had something of that nature, and then I had a fish salad, something like that. Afterwards, I asked for dessert. Let's go for dessert. So we went to another location where he got coffee and I got muffins. I got banana muffins, which were really good. And by that time, an hour passed, and we were supposed to go back to my remaining 3 interviews. When we got back, he introduced me to my next interviewer, and at that time, that interviewer asked me if I want to drink. So we went. I wanted to get a cup of tea, a cup of tea, but there was no water. So we went back to the conference room and started the interview. So this one was a really challenging one for me. It was something that I haven't done for a very long time, and I don't think I ever had to do that at work. It was just something that I studied at the university, and since then I didn't have to use it. And it was bidimensional arrays. I kind of know what it is, I know the concept, but solving something, and my brain just completely left me at that time. I understood what is needed, I understood the problem, but I could not program it. And I don't know what was the problem. Was it that my brain was after lunch and just was having a siesta, or I was nervous? I have no idea what happened, but just I could not, for the life of me, I could not solve that problem programmatically. I had the pseudocode, I had everything, but I could not solve that problem programmatically. And yeah, I just kind of screwed that one up. Once that one interview was over, the next interview was basically an interview about interview on Googleness, right? I don't think I can pronounce that word, but basically it was leadership and soft skills. So I was asked different really nice questions, different thought-provoking questions, and at the same time questions that will give them a sense who I am and what experience do I have and what values do I have. And I really enjoyed that interview. It was a really interesting one, and it just flew by in a blink of an eye. I could not believe that 45 minutes just went by, and probably he wanted to ask more questions, but I think I answered 5 of them. And one of the questions that he asked, I kind of was prepared for it, because I was expecting that any interview you go to, somebody will ask you, tell me about a time when you had challenges. And even though I had something in mind, at that time I could not remember for the life of me what were my challenges that I prepared. Because we all face challenges, but you don't want to come up in an interview that you have problems with your management or with the process or something, right? You want to give challenge that is something that shows you in a good light that you have a problem, you troubleshoot and brainstorm what can be done and how to solve it, right? So for the life of me, I could not remember something, so I had to improvise. So I improvised something that really isn't challenging for me, but it's not something that I actually was planning to share. Once that interview was over, the last interview started, and it was at 2:15 when it started. Again, another nice software developer, very, very welcoming. He introduced himself, he allowed me to introduce myself, and then he asked me why I want to work there, what are my challenges, and we got down to the problem he wanted me to solve. Initially, I had the impression, was not sure, I had the impression that we were just talking. So I told him, here's what you're looking for, here are the requirements, here's like the input, output, here's the pseudocode, and then I said, it's super simple. I cannot believe it's something that simple. I am sure I'm missing something. And he said, okay, let's do this. So he kind of made it more complicated. And I asked him if it's okay for me to actually write it on the board. And he said, yeah, yes, please do that. Started to code it, but I realized that I was getting in this corner cases that kind of the solution didn't look elegant at all or clean, let's say that. So we started to talk more and kind of took a step back from the code and started to represent that data on the board, just a real life example. And once we did that, I was like, a light bulb just lighted up in my brain. It's like, wait a minute, I should use cues for this, and the solution will be so much simpler, so much faster. And he kind of agreed with me. He was happy that I got to that realization. So it was a communication, it was a collaboration, it felt really natural. I really liked that interaction that we had. So once I had the cue going on, I implemented that. Obviously, I made some mistakes there, the syntax, I could not remember something about the syntax. But he didn't look worried about that. I would just want to see what you know and how you think through the problem and how you solve it. So when we looked at the time, we were about like 10 minutes more than we're supposed to have for that interview. So he said, let's pause and let's go to the section if you have any questions. So we got to ask questions, and I get to get some answers from him, which were really interesting, insightful information about his process, his challenges, and the position he's facing, and so on. And once that was done, we walked out of the conference room. He walked me back to the building where I checked in for me in order to check out, because I had the badge. I needed to scan it on the way out and leave the badge there. So that's kind of the whole process that I had. Here's my whole interview, and it was pretty interesting. I made mistakes. I actually had made a lot of mistakes, but overall, I'm happy with the results. No matter what, I'm happy with the way it turned out. There are some things that I wish I'd done better, but that's kind of what it is. So let's move to the next thing that I want to share with you. I talked about so much about what from the beginning to end the process, but I didn't mention anything about me prepping for this interview and how much did it take for me to prep for this interview. I should start this with a prefix that I have been at my current position, at my current job for the last about 8 years. And that's practically the last time I had an interview for a software developer position. So my interviewing skills were kind of zero, let's say that. And at the same time, what was happening in my life, I have this major event at work. It's really important. It's a really high profile. Everything is super visible. Everything is super demanding that I cannot take time off, and I actually have to prepare for it. It actually was a conference where I was presenting, and I needed to work on my speech. I needed to work on my presentation, set up data. So it was at work. It was a period of time where it's not 40 hours a week won't make it. You have to put in more. And at the same time, I have family that I have to take care of. So between work and family, I really had practically no time to prep for this interview. And between the time I knew when the interview will be and until the actual interview happened, it was practically less than a week. So yeah, I kind of didn't have a lot of time to prep. So I decided that at least I'll go over the information that the recruiters sent in the email, what the recommendation that they provided. So it was a few things that they get there, like 500 algorithms or technical questions that are on Quora. I looked at the 3 of them. They're really good, but it's like I don't have time to go to that level of details. So I read all the information they provided. I watched the videos. I actually watched a mock-up video that they provided, a Google mock-up video, which is an example, a tremendous example. I recommend for anybody to look at that, regardless if you're doing a technical interview at Google or not. It's a really good example to have how an interview should happen either where, at Google, Facebook, Amazon, or a startup, or any technical company, let's say that. So I went through all that information, but at the same time, I figured that I need to brush up on data structures and algorithms. And since I didn't have time, if you can look at my bookshelf there, I have a lot of coding interviews. I have how to crack a coding interview, or the element of a programming interview, and so many more. But since I had no time to prep for that, I decided to take this other book that I have. It's called Grokking Algorithms. And I just started to read it, and it was an enjoyable read because algorithms there are such a complex notion that if you're stressed and you don't have time and you are under pressure and under time restrictions, you don't have time to go into that scientific level. And this was this book describes algorithms in such a simple matter, approachable matter, and it also describes the completion, the big O notion and all that stuff. So I really like that. On that topic, I actually had no anyone from the 5 interviews I had, no one asked me about the Big O notion or anything like that, just a side note. So I read that book. I actually didn't finish it. I read it about probably 2/3 of the book, and then I just I ran out of time. That being said, that was the extent of my preparation for the interview. And you might say, Anna, you are crazy. And maybe I am, truly am. I know there are a lot of people who dream to work at Google, who for years in advance will, maybe not years, maybe weeks, months in advance, they will prep. They will put hours after hours, weeks after weeks to prep for these interviews. They will do, my apologies, they will do LeetCode and other resources that are there to prep for an interview, to set themselves for success, to get the job that they have at this dream company that they want. However, I didn't want to turn it down like just I did with the other opportunities that I had. Like 2 months ago, Facebook reached out asking me if I want to have an interview. And then I had Amazon reaching out asking me if I want to do an interview. And every single time I was turning them down because I didn't have time to prep. Because I know that whatever they're asking about algorithms and this really high profile knowledge that you have to have, but in reality, at the day-by-day job, you're not using that at all. So I said, what the heck, I will just do my best and see where I need to work on. And I just made sure that I have no high expectations and do my best at what I can do. So that was the extent of my preparation for this interview at Google. As you can realize, from the beginning of the process until the actual interview was a really short period of time, and with work on top and family on top, I just could not squeeze in more time to actually do any coding exercises or anything like that. It was practically just reading this book that I just mentioned. From that, it's a long video, a lot of information. We got to the point where I would like to share what I have learned. Before that, actually, I want to mention this one thing. Once the interview was over, I got an email. I don't remember who it was actually from, what department or anything like that, but basically what it was that I have 30 days to check in or to send any expense reports that I have. Any expense reports such as traveling, like take an Uber or a taxi or a cab, or if I had to take a bus or something, or the meals or hotel, anything. I have 30 days to do my expense report and check it in for the reimbursement so the recruiters can get that going for me. I didn't do that yet. I still have time. So I will be doing that in the next couple of days. So what have I learned from this interview at Google, this on-site interview that happened on the Google campus? Number one was to try to avoid getting stuck. And that's what happens to me at interview number 3. Once I got that question, the question about the bidimensional array, the matrix, I got stuck. Instead of communicating to the interviewer just like I did with the other interviews, I needed to tell him, like, I haven't done this in a long time. I don't remember. I understand the concept and I understand the problem on hand, and like I know what steps need to be done. However, I don't remember how to do that, or at this time I'm not able to solve this problem, and see if we can work out together. Maybe there was just one thing that could have got me started and I would have solved it, but I got stuck and I wasted time, and I wasted his time and my opportunity, because let's say that doesn't put me in a really good lighting. The next one, you need to work, at least I have to work on my whiteboard skills. What I realized is that after each interview, the interviewers were taking pictures of the whiteboard. And the whiteboard at the end of the session was not what I wanted it to be, because I had somewhere the requirements and I had a pseudocode, and then I started to write code, and then I realized that I ran out of space. So I was starting to delete something and writing there. So it's like my code starts here and then goes here, and then it was not natural. And that just doesn't make it easy for this person to write a report about me and say, here's the skills that she has and she can do that. Like, it's not critical, but it's definitely something that I should have worked on. And one really important one is that to remember that I'm human. I was kind of upset on myself, because when we had the interview, the soft skills interview, and I asked what is my challenge, I completely spaced out. I forgot the example that I thought about my challenge scenario, and I was pretty upset about that. And then I just had to realize that I'm only human, and it's natural for me to forget. It's natural that under pressure or under this kind of situation, you don't remember things. So it's good to have kind of a contingency or a plan or something that will help you trigger that memory. And that's something that I need to figure out. That's basically everything I wanted to tell you about my experience at Google. The on-site interview at Google Campus was definitely a positive experience for me. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, there were ups and downs. I really was nervous. I really was scary about the process and what to come. But at the end of the day, it was pretty well. I'm happy how it turned out, because I was expecting that I will be much worse given the amount of time I had to prepare and the fact that I had my last interview 8 years ago. I'm happy with the results. Let's say that regardless of the outcome, I'm happy how I performed. I'm happy that I had this experience, and I'm looking forward to the next ones. And one thing that I would recommend, like, if you want and you have opportunity to interview at the company that you want to work for, and if you want to do really well for that interview, my one recommendation is to at least do 3 or 4 or 5 interviews with other companies and get into that skill mindset or practice and work out that nervousness, or get that out of your system. Have the interviews with the companies that you really have on the lower priority where you would like to work, and when you feel that you have that under your belt, that you're already comfortable at interviews, then interview at the company where you want to work for, because that will definitely help you at getting the job that you're dreaming about. Thank you again, and see you next time. Happy engineering. Bye bye.